writer. I am actually a national director of the Appaloosa Horse Club, so I guess sort of, I'm a big wig in there, so I might be a little bit of an expert. I'm also the president of the Western Washington Regional Appaloosa Club. This is Pika Stratton. She is our vice president. Our club is based up in Whatcom, Skagit Island, and Snohomish counties. We'll take warm bodies from anywhere. If you're interested in the Appaloosa horse, you can come on down and join us. But what we're here for today is just to basically talk to you about our breed. We're pretty passionate about it. If you ask either one of us, we're going to tell you they're the best horses ever. You go in that barn and you talk to somebody else, they're going to tell you their horse is the best horse ever. So that's why there's so many different people and so many different breeds. There's something for everybody. But we like to think that there's an Appaloosa for everybody. Doesn't matter what it is that you want to do, your Appaloosa can do it for you. So I can take some stuff away from Pika because her hands are kind of full. Thanks. No, you can hold it for a minute. Thanks. So, does anybody know how the Appaloosa got its name? Pika does. So the Appaloosa is a Native American horse. They are an American breed. They were developed by the Nez Perce in the Palouse region of the U.S. So when people would see them, they would say, oh, okay. Saying hi to somebody. Hey, everybody, hey. So when you'd see one of these guys, they'd say, oh, look, there's a Palouse horse. Eventually that became, it's a Palusi, and then it became Appaloosa. So, Raven's very busy. So what we have before you today are two different versions of Appaloosas. We've got one that's naughty and one that's not. No, really, it's serious. So both of these are Appaloosa horses. That's the cool thing about Appies is they can take on a lot of different shapes and forms and colors. The big thing about the Appaloosa is color. When you look out into a field, you can pretty much recognize your own horse in the sea of all the other ones because they look like that, or like that. They are very distinct, different characteristics. So the typical Appaloosa, they are known for their color, and we've got Raiden front and center. He has his register of merit in most colorful at halter. I think you can understand why. He's colorful. He is your stereotypical Appaloosa. There's two different versions people think of when you say Appaloosa. He is a blanket. He's a blanket Appaloosa, which is characterized by that white spotted butt. They don't always have to have spots on their rear. They can have just a white rear, and that's still an Appaloosa. They can have little snowflakes on their rear. That's still an Appaloosa. They can have any different color variation. He's actually, can you back him up for a minute? Like back him up. You can put that thing away. Just back him up. Thank you. That's probably the trick. So they can come in any color. He's a grula, which is kind of a buckskin type color. It's very unusual. So he's different even in the color that he is, even if you take his spots away. But they can come in any color variation. So any horse in that barn, if it had a blanket or spots on it, could be an Appaloosa, any color. That's the fun thing about them. So not only do you not know what color you're going to get when they're foaled, but you also don't know what color pattern you're going to get. Because Annabelle, who you can't see a lot of her coat because we've got it covered up with her regalia, she's an Appaloosa too, but you can see she's not quite as recognizable as one as he is. So when she was foaled, she was actually solid. She was brown with black legs. As she gets older, she gets more white hairs on there, and we call that roaning. Raiden actually has roaned too. When he was a baby, he was all solid mousy gray on the front, and now he's got the white hairs that kind of salt and pepper, like, you know, distinguished gray like mine. So what Belly's done is she's roaned out, and she's got little spots that have come in as a result. So you can see the tiny little white spots on her body. Peek up, it's easier. You can tie him to a wall. Okay. All right. So, yeah, that's him. So Brayden's busy. How old do you think Brayden is? You think he's a baby by the way he's acting, right? He's 11. He's old enough to know better, but he's very mischievous and playful, and that's his personality. Whereas Belle is actually the younger of the two. She's 9, and she's about as quiet and steady as you're gonna get. So even amongst individuals of a certain breed, you're still gonna have personality that shows through. He's just got an extra lot of it, So on Belle, you can see she's got these tiny little white spots. And she's got them on her tushy too. Oh, that's not. So little white spots here, and then you can also see some brown spots. So as she gets older, when she's 20, she'll probably be mostly white and then have little brown spots on her. And then they'll get what we call varnishing, and she's already starting to get that, where the brown stays fairly solid, and then they start getting white around it. So they tend to get on their hips, their stifles, forearms, and that's just part of the way they roan out. You can have leopards. That's the other real common coat pattern that we will see in Appaloosas, and those are what people look at and they say, oh look, it looks like a Dalmatian. And even those guys can come in different colors, so they'll have the spots, but their spots can be in different colors too. Your probably typical leopard's going to be a white horse with black spots, but they can have red spots too. And I've got a friend who has one that's got 2 different colored spots on her leopard, so he's got black spots and a couple brown ones. We can decide. So color pattern is big in these guys. We do aim to get color. That's the whole point of the Appaloosa. We love the color. We are a breed with a color preference, but you can have solid Appaloosas. My sister had a national and world champion who was solid brown, and he was still an Appaloosa because their bloodlines tell you they're an Appaloosa. But this would be our ultimate, would be have something that has a lot of color like this, like Raiden does. There are other ways we can tell what an Appaloosa is. If we don't have the color, we should have other characteristics. And Raiden's the best one, I think, for showing the eye sclera, because his eyes are really cool looking to begin with. Because he's a grula, his eyes are more golden color. So when you see him in the sunlight, they're absolutely gorgeous. I find myself staring into his eyes. I think that might be something wrong with that, but they're just really beautiful. You might not be able to see it so much in here. I can see with the sun kind of backlighting them. I can see it in front of them right now. They're a little bit lighter than typical horse's eyes. But that's not the Appaloosa characteristic. That's just a characteristic of his color. The Appaloosa characteristic is the white around his eyes. So Appaloosas are the only breed that have white sclera, like people do. And they'll actually refer to that as a human eye. So they have what we call human eyes, and it gives them a little bit more expression. I've had some people tell me that it unnerves them. They say it looks weird and it makes them feel kind of creeped out. I've been looking at Appaloosa eyes since I was 12, so I guess that just to me is that's their face. But I think you can read their expressions easier because you can see actually where their pupils are and their irises. But so that is one big characteristic of the Appaloosa horses, is to have that white sclera. The other is the mottled skin. So an Appaloosa has skin that's pigmented in 2 different colors. They'll have gray and then they'll have pink. And you'll see those different variations in their muzzles, around their eyes. If I shaved their ears like they were being shown, you'd be able to see it in their ears. These guys are used for trail nowadays, so I let their hair grow out, protect them from the flies and that. But they do have mottling in their ears, and then around the little boy and girl part, but we're not going to show those to you because it's a family show. So mottled skin, striped hooves. Probably the hoof facing you on Raiden. Raiden's back foot probably shows the striping the best. So horses in general can have striped feet regardless of the breed, but in any other breed, when you have a stripe, it's because there's a different color hair at the coronary band, which is the area right where the skin meets the hoof. So if she had a white spot here, actually in a typical horse, this would be a white sock, and they might have a little spot there, like a little bit of pigment, and then there would be a black stripe with a cream foot. On the Appaloosa, she's solid, but she's got a stripe right here. So, and you can see on Raiden's right left rear foot, you really see the striping on there, and that's a solid foot. So it's not, the pigment in their feet isn't determined by the color of the hair right above the coronary band. It's determined by the fact he's got DNA that says I'm an Appaloosa. And then another thing you might notice is a very big difference in the mane and tail between Annabelle and Raiden. Neither one have the best mane and tail. And Raiden, I'm like so proud because he's got like a foot of hair. It's just very thin. This I've not done anything to this mane. This is natural. So she grows it this way. Appaloosas are very notorious for not having mane and tail. It's a characteristic of the breed. I believe that it's part of what gives them the genes that dictate their color, also tells them to have the thin mane and tails. So we're always struggling to get mane and tail in these guys, and sometimes we just have to embrace it. Annabelle a lot of times has her mane roached just because, and that roaching is just shaving it. So you just shave what's there off to make it even and level, and it makes it look nicer than all these scraggly hairs all over the place. So, you can use these guys for whatever you want. They come in a lot of different shapes and sizes depending on their lineage and their breeding. So mine are trail horses. Raiden is a retired, well, both of them are retired show horses. Belle used to be a youth horse, so they used to ride her Western. Western would be what we typically see in the, well, you know, Westerns, movies with the cowboy saddles, roping, getting cattle, that kind of thing. Raiden was also a show horse. He's mostly shown in halter, so he was shown for his beauty. But he also was shown in this very similar regalia that Belly is wearing right now, and he was actually with under the ridership of a youth rider. He actually won a world championship in heritage class with her a couple years back. And then he became my horse, now he's a trail horse. So this horse is carrying me up in the mountains. We've ridden over 1,500 documented trail miles together, earned a medallion on him, and we're working on another medallion with him because he's just so much fun to ride, real dependable. These guys are sure-footed because the Nez Perce developed them. They were war horses. They were hunting horses, and because after the hunt or after their battles, they brought these horses back into their camps where their families are. So they had to be quiet and they had to be gentle because children would run underneath them when they came back into camp. They'd go between their legs, they'd hang on their necks. They're family horses, and yet they had to be brave enough to go into battle. So they're very unique in that they're quite versatile in what you want to do with them. They can be children's horses, they can be used for things that they have to be more bold at accomplishing, so like jumping, mounted shooting, and archery. There's a lot of people that are using it for that. A lot of people like them because they're colored. My sister lives in Georgia, and she says a whole bunch of people down there are looking for them for the jumping classes because they like to look flashy going over the jumps. So they're a very versatile animal. They have a lot of endurance, again, because they're developed for crossing a lot of territory. The Nez Perce were nomadic, so they did have homes. So they did have home bases, like around Joseph, Oregon, named after Chief Joseph. They would have actual buildings that they had as homes that they'd made, huts, I guess. And then they would migrate through the year, depending on where the crops and the animals were, and then go back to home base in Joseph. So they traveled long distances with them. So the endurance riders like these horses a lot too. They don't have a lot of quit, and they'll just keep going. That little horse right there, he was on a 4-day trail ride just last weekend. We did 28 miles in a day. On the Chief Joseph Trail ride this year, we did 31 miles in a day. And he would have kept going if we needed him to. The 28 miles. Yeah. When you're going out on a trail ride, one, you should know where you're going. It was marked. But your marks should show up really good in the dark, and you should know when the sun sets. And I kind of did. I kind of just really wanted to do that ride. And so I went out and I did it. And he did beautifully. It was a dusk hit, and I knew I was in trouble because I knew it was about an hour outside of camp. And so I started trotting him. And going higher speeds in the dark where you're not really sure where you're going probably isn't the smartest thing, but he is so sure-footed, and they can see better in the dark than we can. So I only trotted where I felt comfortable. We actually cantered or loped, which is running, a little bit too. And pitch black, and that he carried me back to camp. I mean, so they're dependable and solid. I mean, he's just solid. I wouldn't trade this horse for the world. Somebody offered me money for him good money for him last year, actually, though he was in the stall. They didn't even see him move or anything. They just threw out a number. I'm like, wow. Okay, no, but wow, thanks. He's just amazing, an amazing animal. And this little one, I haven't had her as long, but she's proving to be just as solid as he is. So, talk about what they do. We talk about what they look like. We can talk about her regalia. She's sitting here all dressed up. Let's talk about it. All right, so Belle is falling asleep. It's a lot of activity, and she's like, I'm all alone. I can actually fall asleep right now. So what she's wearing is not Nez Perce. I wish it was Nez Perce. Regalia is not easy to come by if you don't make it yourself. I actually do plan on making a set of Nez Perce regalia for my horses, just because I think it'd be great for educational purposes. But you can imagine it takes a long time to make this. I've got a friend that's creating regalia right now for a heritage class for next year. She's been working on it over a year and a half, and she's nowhere near done. And she works on it like every day. There's a lot of beadwork, a lot of sewing that goes into this. So as you can see, what she's wearing is she's got a head stall, and they would decorate their head stalls with masks, or this is called a keyhole, and you can understand why, because it's shaped like a keyhole. This is more modern beading. Before they had beads, they would actually use porcupine quills, and they would quill their regalia, and they'd take the quill and they'd soften it, and they would bend it, and at the bend would be where they'd stitch it, and they would so it had like a linear type of a look to it. Very beautiful to see quill work, but it's not very common because it doesn't hold up to time very well. The beadwork holds up. These are little glass trade beads that the Native Americans would get when they're trading with trappers and settlers, trade furs, or they trade horses for this stuff. So they'd acquire the beads that way, and they'd adorn their gear. They did not ride in this every day. Most warriors rode bareback. If they did use a saddle, most warriors would use a pad saddle. This is a lady's saddle, also known as a fort or a plateau saddle. They are not comfortable. I told somebody in the barn multiple times, they are not comfortable. Not at all. Most people would have a bear hide or a buffalo hide draped over the saddle. It gives it a little more cush, but it's not enough to make them comfortable. But they would ride in them when they're having ceremonies, when they're welcoming people home. They empty saddle ceremonies when they're honoring someone that's passed away. They always pull out their finery, and this would be what they put on. I've actually been at a couple of empty saddle ceremonies when I've been on Chief Joseph Trail Ride, and it's emotional and it's just beautiful. It's definitely an experience. So what these are made out of, anyone have a guess? Go ahead. Yeah. You're right, they're made out of wood, for sure. Can you recognize what this might be? It's a branch from a tree, right? So you have the tree branch coming here, and then it branches off into two branches. So they had to find two trees that had stout enough branches on them that had the fork that would be fairly even, so it would make for a nice saddle. And they would cut that down, take the bark off, and then they'd find some more wood, and they'd split it. And this is actually not, if you want to come in the barn and see this later, I'll pull it down and pull it off the rack and show it to you. But it's not a flat piece of wood, it's bowed. Because a horse's back is bowed. So it's actually bowed to fit their backs better. So it is more comfortable for them than just having this block of wood on there. So they put these pieces of wood together, and then they take wet rawhide and they cover the saddle in rawhide. You guys all, how many of you have dogs? How many of you give rawhide to your dogs? As a veterinarian, I like to see that. Don't give rawhide to your dogs. So you know how hard rawhide is. And so what happens is as that rawhide dries, it makes this solid and sturdy. And then they want to decorate it because it's all about how pretty it is. This is actually a really plain saddle, but so what they do is they cover it in leather and then they'll bead it. Mine has tassels, they're kind of covered up, but mine has tassels on it. A lot of the plateau saddles have tabs where they have a piece of leather coming down, kind of like a, I don't know, sort of like pyramid, and then they'll bead that. So you have a beautiful piece of beadwork here and a beautiful piece of beadwork here. And it's usually made to match everything else. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So they would decorate pretty much everything. So this has stirrups and it's got stirrup covers. This is what we call a breast collar or a martingale. And again, if you want to come in the aisle and look at this, I'll take this off the rack and let you hold it. It is heavy. This stuff is not light. There's so much, the beadwork, you wouldn't think they're just beads. They're little tiny beads. How heavy can they be? But they're on this heavy hides, and then that beadwork actually does add up, makes it nice, really heavy. So they would bead it, and then they'd get little pony beads and tin cones. They used to take these from like chew containers and roll them. And then hawk bells they got from trade. But when she walks, she sounds so pretty because you can hear all the noise that she makes. So it's kind of the equivalent of having a noise maker at a party. You know, when you're at a party and you blow your horns, this is their noise that they would make. They would sing, they would drum, and then the horses would walk around and they make their own music. See, this needs to have some on it too, because that's really quiet. They used whatever they had. So they did trapping, or not trapping, they hunt, and they would process whatever the animals were that they ate, and this is part of it. They would harvest their furs. So these are actually coyotes. They made a bag out of this little guy. So he's got his hair still there, but they actually would carry things around. I actually have some stuff in here that came with the bag when I got it, some sage and some, I'm not sure what else in there. I haven't even looked in there in a long time. There's some herbs and stuff in there. This is called a saddle drape. Sometimes they would make saddle bags out of this as well. And again, it's just decoration. They would make sure that it didn't go too far, horses would get tangled up in it, and they just, anything they could do to make it look prettier. So this actually has fringe that's actually braided into it. They're little lark's head knots that actually braided in. We'll have crippers or decorations that come down their side, go underneath their tail to the other side. She actually has a badger fur that goes over her rump, but the tie on it broke this morning, so we couldn't use it. If you want to walk her around so people can hear her. Oh, yeah, that's right. How old are they? The horses? So Raiden right here is 11, and Belly, who's walking around, is 9. You are walking really slowly. Yeah. She's tired. It sounds really it echoes in the barn, so you can really hear it, but it's just kind of fun and the tinkly and happy noises. So, okay, that's cool. I'll let you have him. I'll go grab those pieces of beadwork. He's not going anywhere. He'll probably roll. That's what white horses do. White horses say, "You want me to be clean?" That's a funny joke. And then they roll. He was green this morning, but I missed it because she was even greener. So I had to do a lot of grooming this morning. If you want to see some beadwork up close, as long as you make sure this head's back to me, I can pass these around. These are, there you go. So the long piece that I'm passing around, that's actually a neck piece. So it goes around the throat latch area. You want to point to the throat latch area with the extra spare hand that you have? Come on, Pika, you can do it. Extra spare hand. Point to the throat latch area. Throat latch. Test your anatomy. So it would lay right there in the throat latch area around his neck. It's just another way to decorate them. And then this is another keyhole. That is not authentic. My friend from Germany made it and gave it to me for getting to bear paw in a couple of years ago. I finished my Chief Joseph Trail Ride journey. I rode all 13 legs of the ride, and that was a gift from her to me for that. So you can actually see she's got some glue on it. Obviously, that's not authentic. They didn't use glue, but it lets you see the beads and touch them and see them up close. So, any questions? more than happy to answer questions. So one of the things at Appaloosa Horse Club, one of our big gems, I guess you could say, our big events, is the Chief Joseph Trail Ride. We have 3 big events each year. We have the National Appaloosa Show, National Appaloosa and Youth World Show. We have the Appaloosa World Show, and then my favorite is the Chief Joseph Trail Ride. It's my favorite because it honors the people who gave us this horse to begin with. The Chief Joseph Trail Ride it follows the route that the Nez Perce took when the cavalry was pursuing them. Little quick history lesson. The Nez Perce have lived in an area where there's gold, and the government said, we get our hands on that. So they put out a treaty, but only half the tribe agreed to the treaty, and the other half, which was Chief Joseph's band and multiple other chiefs, they said, no, we don't agree to that. But the government took the treaty as done and said, well, you agreed. So they said, all right, well, you're going to take our land, we're going to go find somewhere else to be, and they left. They didn't realize that they were at war. And when they got to Big Hole, they were sleeping, and the orders from the military were to shoot low in the teepees early in the mornings. So they actually massacred a lot of them, and they ran up into the hills, and then they knew they were at war. So it was a 1,300-mile, that wasn't my, look, we've got a war horse coming. It was a 1,300-mile journey to try to escape, and the Chief Joseph Trail Ride follows that route. And so we do that every year. We've been doing it for 55 years now, and we do that in honor of the Nez Perce as a recognition and just appreciating them for giving us this beautiful animal. So if you want to talk more, you want to see more, you want to see the regalia up close and personal, you can go ahead and do that. Do we have the beadwork? Thank you. Appreciate that. We have a war horse ready to come in. He's a pretty fancy dude, so you might want to stick around and watch him. Come join us in the exhibition barn. We've got breeds of all kinds, shapes, and sizes in there. There's even a unicorn. I kid you not. So thank you very much, everybody.